The Empty Stocking, written by Richard Curtis, illustrated by Rebecca Cobb. It was Christmas night and Mr. and Mrs. Weston were excited, as were their twins, Sam and Charlie, who were, despite their names, both girls. Sam was Samantha and Charlie was Charlotte, but they were never called those names. They were always called Sam and Charlie. They were also always twins, both having been born on June the 21st, Midsummer's Day, 7 years before. But their birthday was not the only thing about them that was the same. They also looked exactly the same. Although, of course, people who really loved them could completely see the difference. Sam always wore her hair in pretty plaits, and Charlie had a little scar on her cheek in the shape of a fork. Well, actually, as children, they couldn't be more different. And on Christmas night, that was a serious worry, because Sam was always very well behaved, and Charlie was, well, not to mince words, because this is basically what this story is about. Charlie was quite bad. Not really bad, but very naughty. Not interested in being obedient. Quite often very grumpy. Not very fond of telling the complete truth, but very fond of eating sweets, making a filthy racket, and having too much fun. Her parents, of course, still loved her to bits, loved her as much as Sam, because that's what parents do. But for instance, her teachers found her very annoying because she was particularly naughty at school. And her next door neighbors hated her because she was very naughty at home. And shopkeepers didn't like her one bit because she ate a lot of their sweets and very rarely paid for them. Anyway, it was Christmas night, and as usual, the family watched Elf, which was just great. Then Dad read them the night before Christmas, which was very good, and How the Grinch Stole Christmas, which was even better. Then Mum sat down at the piano and made them all sing Santa Claus is Coming to Town, and as always, when they got to the bit about Santa knowing whether you'd been good or bad, everybody couldn't help looking for just a moment in Charlie's direction. Because this was a worry. There was no way Santa wouldn't know what Charlie had been up to this year. But, as usual, when it got late, the children put out the stockings at the end of their beds and left a mince pie, a tangerine, and a glass of port for Santa by the chimney, and then headed off, very excited, to bed. And Charlie said to her dad, "Daddy, do you think Santa will bring me anything this year?" And her dad said, "Yes, of course he will, my darling." But there is no denying it, he was a little bit worried because this really had been Charlie's naughtiest year yet. What with the eating a whole box of chocolates incident, and the glue in the DVD episode, and the ice on the back of the teacher's dress moment, and the worst things. Then Mum and Dad went upstairs to bed pretty early too because they'd heard a story about Mum and Dad who had stayed up late and actually bumped into Santa Claus on the stairs. And Santa Claus had scarpered off and they had to quickly fill stockings for the kids themselves to make up for Santa's hasty exit. So at 11:10 they got into their pajamas, turned off their lights, and even though they whispered till midnight, at least they knew that Santa could get on with his job undisturbed. And Of course, that's exactly what Santa did. At about 1:15 in the morning, he arrived in England from Spain in a very good mood because he was getting quite near home. He moved up swiftly from Kent, rushed through London, and sped on to Suffolk, where good Sam and naughty Charlie lived. He landed in the garden, placed the hungry reindeer near a tasty hedge. By the way, look out for that next year. If you've got a garden, you'll normally find that a bit of it has been mightily munched on Christmas morning, and then headed down the chimney into the living room. Dusting himself off, he crept past Mum and Dad's door and into the room where the twins slept. And there he filled one stocking and left the other one completely empty. Because Charlie had indeed been very bad that year. He never liked doing it, but sometimes Santa has to get tough. And this year, in Charlie and Sam's room, was one of the get tough times. He then left the room quickly, drank a bit of port, gobbled the whole tangerine and the pie, swooshed up the chimney and headed on, and left the house totally still. Mum and Dad had no idea of the terrible thing that had just happened. Neither did Sam or Charlie. One stocking hung light and empty, and the other swung with the weight of all the wonderful presents. For 3 hours nothing moved, not even a mouse, or a fox, or an owl, or a badger. And then, just by chance, as fate would have it, at 4 in the morning, naughty Charlie woke up and looked down at the end of the bed and saw a gorgeous full stocking. Because you see, Santa hadn't looked very carefully, and when Charlie and Sam were sleeping, you couldn't see Sam's plaits and you couldn't see the scar on Charlie's cheek, so they looked exactly and completely and utterly the same, with disastrous results. Charlie was thrilled about the stocking, and because she was quite naughty, she decided that she would go and sneak a peek at all her presents before everyone else woke up. But as she went down the bed, she looked across at her sister's bed and saw the empty stocking. And she stopped dead, and she just sat there and thought very hard, with a big frown. Because no one really bothered to notice, but amongst all her naughtiness, Charlie really loved her sister. And sometimes the actual reason she was naughty was because she loved making Sam happy. And sometimes when she was really naughty, it was because she loved making Sam laugh. And sometimes when she was really, really naughty, it was because other people had been picking on Sam, and Charlie was certainly not having that. And then Charlie thought about her sweet sister's face in the morning, when she'd reach for her stocking all excited about the toys and sweets and games she'd find inside, and she would find nothing in it at all. She thought about how Sam would try to be brave, and how Sam's chin would start to wobble. And she thought about how she felt whenever Sam was sad. Not sad because Charlie had just sat on her, but really, properly, in her heart sad. And then, very quietly, so she didn't wake up Sam, naughty Charlie started to move presents from her full stocking into Sam's empty one. Present by present, one after the other, in a totally mathematical manner, even if she really liked something, until both stockings were half full, with exactly the same number of presents, because half was a lot better than nothing. And when she'd made him completely sure each stocking was the same, Charlie breathed a sigh of relief and went back up her bed and went to sleep. And everything went quiet again at home, but not, as it turns out, on Santa's sleigh, because Santa was getting near the North Pole when suddenly something very unexpected happened. A light started to flash on his good pedometer, the machine that told him which children had been good and which ones had been bad. And Santa looked very surprised indeed, because this had never happened before. There'd been a last-minute change. 45 minutes later, a very exhausted fat old man with a beard landed on a lawn in Suffolk with a very munched head. And a minute later he was on the stairs again, creeping towards the twins' room. And when he popped his head into the room, he saw the two half-filled stockings, and he smiled. And then swiftly, because it was getting very close to the time that children starts to wake up, he filled up both stockings to the brim and crept back down the stairs. But just as he put his head in the chimney, he had one last thought and headed back up the stairs one last time and popped one last little thing into Charlie's stocking. 5 minutes later, Santa flew away in the highest of spirits. And indeed, just like he used to in the old days, he hollered for all to hear, "Happy Christmas to all, and to all a good night." Good night! Which actually woke up good Sam, who looked down her bed and saw a completely full stocking, just as she expected. Then she looked across at naughty Charlie's bed, a little bit worried, but she saw, thank heavens, that her sister's stocking was completely full as well. So she woke Charlie, who, for some reason Sam could never explain, looked very shocked indeed by their two full stockings. "I suppose," Sam said to her mother later, "it must be because Charlie didn't expect to get any presents at all this year." Then Sam and Charlie both rushed into Mum and Dad's room and opened all the presents, one after another, and everyone was very happy indeed. But when the stockings were completely empty, Charlie happened to put her hand in just one more time, just to check. And she was surprised to find a small bright badge that looked a bit like Rudolph's nose. She never showed it to anyone because she was a bit embarrassed about it. But she always kept it because secretly she was very proud of it. And secretly, although she knew she was sometimes very naughty indeed, she also thought it might be true. It just said two words: good girl.